Okay, we're going to talk about Exodus 32 through the end of the book and a couple really key things that we want to mention here. A little explanation of the golden calf incident. This might be strange to us. Like, why, when Moses was up on Mount Sinai, would the people make this golden calf? Well, there's a couple things for us to think about. Um, First of all, just the explanation of the human heart. I heard one pastor say that when there is a void in when there's a God void in our heart, something else will fill it up. If we're not worshiping the Lord, like Bob Dylan said, we're going to serve somebody. It might be the devil or it might be the Lord, but we're going to serve somebody. And so now that Moses is gone and God's representative's gone, something is going to fill the place in their heart. Something, they're going to worship something. And so they ask Aaron to forge this golden calf. And the golden calf was something that represented the power and the fertility of maybe what they experienced in Egypt, something they could see with their eyes, not just a voice that they could hear from the Lord or a representative like Moses. And what's interesting about this whole story is how Aaron seems to go along with the whole plan because the people wanted it. And man, that's so easy for leaders, especially spiritual leaders, for us to tell people what they want to hear. It creates a big response. It seems to be very successful, and it can be very hard to stay faithful to the Lord when people get really excited about something that we're saying, even though it might not be good. And so it says he formed it. He fashioned this calf, so he was very active in it. And the Lord sees what's going on and tells Moses that he's about to destroy the people for them breaking the first command out of that covenant, that contract that God was making his people. And Moses stands in between as like an intermediary. Moses kind of takes the place of Jesus in this story and says, remember your promises, and stands between God and the people. The Lord does forgive the people. But Moses comes down from the mountain and breaks the stone tablets as a way to show them that they've already broken their marriage vow with God, their covenant vow with the Lord. And the way Aaron explains it is, I didn't know what to do. These people just told me to do this, and I throw this gold in the fire, and out comes this calf. You're not taking responsibility. Again, the importance of good biblical leadership. Well, after this whole episode, Moses asks that the Lord would go with them in his presence, because the Lord is again saying, I can't keep going with these people. They don't want to follow me. And Moses again pleads. It's like an intermediary that he would go with them with his presence. And that's what we need more than anything, is God's presence to be with us. It's the only thing that makes us strong. It's the only thing that makes us can do anything of any value. And God reveals to Moses his presence. And he speaks this name. It's in Exodus 34 that comes up over and over again. The Lord, the compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger and abounding in love and faithfulness, forgiving wickedness, rebellion, and sin, and yet he will not leave, or forgiving thousands of wickedness, rebellion, and sin who obey me. But then he does say, but he punishes the children of the sins of the third and fourth generation. That God is a God who is both compassionate and gracious and a just God. How can he love sinful people and yet still condemn sin? Well, ultimately, that's why there'll be a need for sacrifice. The sacrifice is when an animal, it's a picture of an animal that is sacrificed in the place of the people, as a way of saying that something has to pay. And these are all symbols and visuals of what ultimately is true in Jesus Christ. Now, ancient cultures around Moses' time would have been doing sacrifices, but they would have understood sacrifice as a way of appeasing the gods, as a way of feeding the gods who are hungry. But God used those ancient practices of what the people around them would have been doing. Egyptians and Canaanites would have done sacrifices, but what made Israel's God different and the true God is that a sacrifice was a picture of the substitutionary work that the Messiah would do, Jesus Christ, in the future. Then you have this long series of explanations of the tabernacle. Now, we already heard about how they would make it. Now it's kind of them providing for it and setting up for it. We hear that the people gave so much. After they've been forgiven from God, they gave so much that Moses told them to stop giving. They had all this money and gold that they got from Egypt when God made the people, disposed to giving them. And now they had this gold, and they gave freely out of their hearts, so much so they had more than what they needed for the tabernacle. And the tabernacle was this tent, and it was a recreation of Eden. It was supposed to be, God wanted to dwell again with his people. He wanted to recreate Eden, and this is very, very important. But he also wanted to teach them that there was a separation between God and his people. And so in these chapters, it gets kind of long and hard to read, but it's really important that you understand the amazing teaching tool that the tabernacle was. So God was going to make a new Eden, a new mountain, a new place where God would meet with his people in this tent. And so he would come down to this hot spot of his presence called the most holy place behind the curtain, where the Ark of the Covenant was. See Indiana Jones' Ark of the Covenant if you need to know what that is. And then he had this thick curtain that was made between where the most holy place is and the holy place. And the holy place was the place where the priests who were ordained and went through all the sacrificial rites of purifying themselves from their own sin. Again, all this is symbolic. And they could go into the holy place. And the holy place had lots of Eden symbolic furniture as well. You had the candelabra or the menorah that was shaped like the tree of life, this candle that was shaped like the tree of life. Then you had the showbread, like the bread of presence, that God was the sustaining bread of life for them. And then you had the altar of incense, this incense that went up to heaven as a way of representing their prayers. And all of this would ultimately find its fulfillment in Jesus. Jesus is the tree of life. He is the bread of life, and he allows our presence to be to smell sweet and to God, to go up to God. Then outside of the tabernacle, there was another curtain, and then once you left the tabernacle, there was this wash basin that the priest would have to wash in, and then there was an altar for sacrifices. And this really is a visual for the life of a Christian. It's a visual for the New Testament church. So if you go now backwards, how it was set up, and again goes in a lot of detail about the order and how it was all set up. But you think about it, there's a sacrifice. That's Jesus who made a sacrifice. Then priests would wash in the wash basin. We're washed in our baptisms. Then the priest could enter into the holy place, which we can enter into God's presence now because of Jesus' sacrifice and our baptism. That points to the sacrifice. And then we get to eat this bread of presence. We get to eat the Lord's body and blood in the Lord's Supper, and we get to offer our prayers up. And then when Jesus died on the cross, this tabernacle became the temple, and that curtain that separated the most holy place and the holy place was torn in two from top to bottom. So again, although this is hard to read and listen to, or hard to read through, all of these rituals, all of these rites connected to the tabernacle were teaching spiritual truths that ultimately pointed to Jesus in the New Testament. Finally, at the end of the book of Exodus, Moses had set up all of the things in the tabernacle the way they were supposed to be, in the order, in the places, with all the how they were supposed to be set up. And the glory of the Lord that came down on Mount Sinai now was coming down on the tabernacle. So God's presence, that glory of the Lord that came on the burning bush, then came down on Mount Sinai, now is coming down on the tabernacle. And that same glory of the Lord would come down on the temple that Solomon would build in the future. And then on Pentecost, the glory of the Lord was not on the temple, but this glory of the Lord, this fire, this kind of smoke, would separate and rest on the people at Pentecost, if you know that story. And God was saying, now my tabernacle, my living tabernacles, are not in buildings, but on my people, on my followers, on those apostles and those Christians, on us. We are a walking tabernacle. One more final thought. It's interesting that the glory of the Lord comes down and inhabits it. God is inhabiting his tabernacle, come to dwell with his people, but Moses can't go in. And that's how the end of the book of Exodus ends. And so now Leviticus is going to show all the rites and rituals that need to happen so that we can enter into the presence of God. Hope that helps. Keep reading. Don't give up. Make a comment below if these videos are helpful. Keep sharing, keep reading, and we'll see you soon.